Hello, friends. Welcome to Clarify and Decode. Here we aim to demystify software engineering in everyday conversational language. In today's episode, let's look ways to improve API performance. It's like a complete end-to-end guide. You may already know many areas where you can improve the API performance, but sometimes you would miss out on other parts of the infra, network, DB, UI level. So here we will try to explain how each area can be improved and what are the ways for it. So let's get started. So suppose we have developed a great API in terms of business logic, but it is not performing well in production, or you are about to design and develop a API. It will sit into these considerations. We will have a host, you can call it server, where it would be running. So this is your API. I'm just calling it V1 booking. And you will fetch data from somewhere. Mostly it would be some kind of database. So other component would be DB. And the third would be some end users of the API. Okay. I understand, like, I can have multiple instances of DB, multiple instances where the code is running, okay, like a load balanced concept, multiple other components like an API gateway, and XYZ things. But for the sake of clarity, I'm just going through the simplest setup and then I would add on. Okay, so let's look at the DB level. And I have decided to go into each module in a, I would say, phased wise. One would be like things you should absolutely know as a developer or a software engineer, and the other one would be an expertise level for the same components, which would also be beneficial. So let's come to the DB part. The first and foremost thing that you can think of is the query part. How good you have written your queries. So let me just have it here. Let me choose a different pen. Okay. First thing is query. Have you written good enough queries in terms of are they firing to the right indexes? Do you have right indexes or not? Are you getting a lot of things in the where clause? Sorry, in the select clause, which is absolutely not required. And also in the where clause, you can fine tune it, right? I hope you get the idea. This is like very, very basic. The query part, the actual SQL statements that are getting executed. Second thing would be pooling. Okay, we should have it in an optimum level. So pooling, it is like the database connection pools. Whenever you would fetch something from a DB, you would require a connection, right? And the connection is coming after you have a ready-made pool you can just choose from it, or you are going on the fly. So this is a heavy operation. Okay, it's not like you have 100 users, so you will open 100 connections and you will have a pool size of db connection pool size of 100. Each object would be very very heavy and it would weigh down on your infrastructure. So pooling optimum level is very very crucial. Third thing here would be, you have to think of way of caching it at the db level itself. Cache in a very simple sense is like we are putting data somewhere from where we can get it very fast. Okay, and the most common point is the memory of a system. So here this is running on a host, right? The db service is running on a host. So we can think of ways of doing a cache at the db level itself. On a higher construct, when we have multiple instances, okay, of the db, we can think of having a distributed db cache. Means here it would have a small memory, right? M, small memory. From here we are fetching. We can have a very big machine and we can utilize all its memory to put frequently accessed data here. Of course it has some added overheads which can be thought about, improved, but in a general sense caching is really really helpful whenever we have large context of data. Okay, so this is, I think, what everybody should know, and then I would come up with other points in the advanced or the expertise level for db. I think people will readily understand. It also depends upon individual infra of the db, like how good the cpu is, how good the memory is, and other parts of it. Fine. So now I think this part looks good. Now come to the code part, the actual code you have written. Okay, what you can improve on it when you are designing or improving on a api. It can be any language. Okay, you can think of it. I'm just giving you like 5 seconds so that you feel confident. Okay, you already know this thing. Okay, let's get started here as well. api, whenever you're doing, and if something can really be done asynchronously, use it. Okay, so async calls. Okay, suppose you have an api for booking. Internally it would require a notification. If the business and functionality allows that the notification is not prompt, internally you can call it as a asynchronous call, and you can just give, okay, booking b1 is done. This will really improve your api power in terms of large number of bookings which it can suffice. Same construct I would give for logging, because when we do code we will do logging, and sometimes what we do, we just have it in the sequence. Okay, if it is something good, log that also. If something is failing, log that also. See here also we can think of asynchronous logging. So in already developed applications, you can think of this point and asynchronous logging if it can be improved. The third thing is computation, not required computation. So try to keep each of your endpoints very lean. Okay, if you required that something can be done in a separate endpoint, you can leverage it. So if it is a heavy application logic, try to split it up. It's not like, okay, for each and everything you would spin up endpoints, but you have to be judicious enough for it. Okay, don't do a lot of computation in one flow. We'll say it can be also something like a lazy loading concept here. So you have a dashboard of booking. So you show B1, B2, B3, B4. You can just load the booking number here with one endpoint. And if user really wants to know more about his booking, let him fire another endpoint for booking details. Okay, so you're not doing a lot of computation on each fire. Okay, booking number is like very low in terms of size, and individually if they are clicking, they are just getting their booking details, right? So this is the thing. I think these would suffice the basic understanding here. Now you will have users calling your API, right? And there can be multiple components here. Okay, so if you have multiple bookings, hosts here, v1 booking, v1 booking, you can have a set of load balancers. I'm just spinning up them up randomly. Okay, I'm not thinking where the calls are going. You can have application gateways. Basically what these are doing, they are acting on the details of your network traffic to route it or balance the calls properly, right? And here there is a flow of network as well. Okay, so network, everything is flowing on the network. Okay, there are many ways we can think of tackling, and many a times I've seen in the projects this really is a game changer. Compress whatever you are sending. Okay, so suppose this is the data you are sending. Okay, like this can be compressed very well into something smaller. Compress the data that is traveling over your network. Doesn't mean you are removing something that is required for the logic, you're just compressing it. And also it should be encrypted. Okay, it's not very relevant to the API performance, but encrypting, as you know, would be important for security concerns. Okay, so encrypt your data. That is very important. The second thing on network level, I would say, is think really if a protocol is good enough. If you're using basic HTTP, things have evolved. If it's an old API and it's undergoing modernization, can the protocol be changed? Of course, there would be things to catch up with the new protocol, some code changes, some plugins, but think of it. Example, think of improving to HTTP2. If everything looks good in your context, can you do a gRPC? Okay, these kinds of things should be thought of at the network level. I would say this is okay for a basic, or like, okay, you know the stuffs. What else? Now I would come at the level at the UI or at the calling level. It's more of a design thing that should be thought of or can be improved. Okay, let me just change what looks good. Okay, UI level. So what I mean is, don't ask for too much data. Okay, so if you have a dashboard here, you may have like 1000 bookings, but does your user really require 1000 bookings at one time? Unless it is something like a report or in an Excel, he cannot read it everything, right? So have your APIs designed so that they try to get a small chunk of the bookings, a small chunk of data. Okay, so something like in your API you can design a range. Just whenever you call, first give me the 0 to 49 bookings, then it can go on increasing. Okay, this is at the API level, you are giving the ranges in the API. So something like, okay, v1 booking range and default range, something. Same concept is the paginated response at the UI level. Okay, have these things as paginated. It will really improve your performance, because everything sits how large your data you're trying to fetch, compute, show. Lesser data, safer data, good for the users. Okay, and one concept here would be the CDN caches. So you would understand, you can put caches at various levels here, right? I just told DB cache. Whenever you have multiple machines which are hosting, you can have the caches here as well. Try to use the memory, just a side of, okay, people will ask how the memory would be used. So it's very basic. In your code you will write a logic, so there would be a method, right, for fetch the booking. So what it will do, first there would be an object where you will see if the booking details is there or not. It's not there, you would go to the DB, fetch the data, save the data in memory, and go to show the response. So booking B1 or booking for person Simon is saved. So whenever Simon will call again, the API method logic, the actual code will say, no, you have to fetch it from the, and I will show you from my cache. And there can be ways where you can agree upon how much time you would show from the cache. So it's a concept of invalidation of caches, which we can maybe discuss in a separate topic. Okay, so I was at CDN level. Okay, so if your API has something which is like static content, I know with API it will not have much, but still I try to bring this point because it will help in overall when you're designing a website. Okay, a fully UI, backend, DB, okay, HTML related concept. You will have static comments, contents, PNGs, static HTML files. There you can have the CDN. So they are nothing, they are provided by companies. There are a lot, Akamai and a lot. You can just visualize the companies on Google, but what they really do, they just are machines which are very close to the users. Okay, so somebody is calling from the US, so there would be a CDN in US location. So it's a machine which is holding the actual HTML or CSS or PNGs, these kind of things which don't change, and it's configured in the framework whenever we have a flow. Okay, give me best response of a product, the highest rating. If it is already saved those HTML, we would just fetch it. So enough of it, it's a different topic altogether, CDNs, but I just wanted to bring it up here as well. Okay, yeah, that's fine. What else? I think let's go to the advanced level. I don't want video to be too long. Okay, I will try to be crisp, and let's see. So we started with DB, right? What else we can do on DB? Can you think of anything else? Okay, let me say, you can have a different DB altogether. Okay, if you're using like a relational database, but if you can switch to a non-relational database if your functionality allows. Okay, it's not one size fits all. Okay, but if you are really looking something like a semi-structured data and you are looking for faster responses, okay, and you have a DB which can be changed, try to go with a non-SQL DB. Okay, or no SQL DB like MongoDB or whatever. Okay, and also you would understand the concepts of improving the DB instances. Okay, like sharding. Okay, like if you have a DB with bookings, try to have smaller DBs with booking US, booking India, booking Singapore. Okay, concepts like this, it will really help in the performance of the DB. What else, guys? Sharding or partitioning, caching we have discussed. Can you think of anything else? DB optimization we have said. Okay, this topic I would just keep a stop here. Okay, and I will let you people just comment what other areas you can think of DB improvement. Okay, because it's fairly simple, but maybe it's not coming to your mind. Okay, I just want you people to think of, and let's see. Okay, okay, let's come for the coding part. Okay, coding part, what you can do. Any ideas? Yeah, so here it would be also the similar concepts. Okay, what framework you are using, can you change something? Okay, can you go with GraphQL instead of REST? These are like I would say solution architecture level points, but these play a major role on the overall performance. Okay, because you can optimize code logic, but if the framework is not very powerful, you have to stick with it or rely how it performs, right? Another thing would be, don't do a lot of, I would say, configurations and coding in the middleware usage. Many a times it's just an overhead, like, so if you have middleware, I would say, in terms of how the request is getting handled. So if you have HTTP request, it goes here. Then there is authorization. These are important. Authentication, but you may put a lot of logics, okay, in the middleware flow itself. So the time it actually reaches your actual code, it's a delay. And after you have responded, means you have the data to respond, but you are again into going into the response level of middleware. Think to improve that. Okay, so if you have checks for authentication and authorization for the same users or the same sessions, okay, are you doing it again and again? Of course, security is important, but there are ways, frameworks, tools where you can just skip it off. Okay, so you would have an understanding, okay, this is a good users. You can think of and study on areas like that. And one important thing would be to think of monitoring the code. Okay, you already have a lot of APM tools, performance monitoring tools like Datadog, Prometheus, New Relic, Dynatrace. Try to identify the bottlenecks from there, because with human eyes it would be difficult in big scenarios, right? You cannot just look into 100 APIs and try to find what piece of code is not responding well. Maybe your booking flow has internally a lot of API calls, and one particular API, one particular method is not responding well. You cannot do anything with the naked eye. Of course, you can get ideas, but tools for code would be really, really important here. I think I should have constructed my diagrams better, but I'll try to improve on it. So tools for hotspots. Okay. What else in terms of the codes? We have discussed about the server side caching. That's very, very important. But apart from the asynchronous processing, think where the parallel processing can also be done, or is it required? Okay, because that is not too bad. If you are in little bit of talk, what is the difference between asynchronous processing and parallel processing? There is a, I would say, very small idea to identify this in terms of threads. Okay, if two threads are executing at the same time, doing your work, during the same work, it's parallel. But if it is a thread is doing your task, okay, but it is being switched for another thing, and again your thread is coming back to do the work, that's asynchronous. So you have to think both of asynchronous and parallel judicially. Okay, fine. Now let's try to cover other points quickly. So I was at the network point, right? Network, I will try to put it as, okay, network, you have to think of like having persistent connections. You don't need to make a lot of optimizations, and because it's at already at the framework level. But you can think of like, can you keep the HTTP thing to always be at a live status, keep a live status. Okay, don't make a lot of connections. In essence, I am saying about persistent connections. Okay, yeah. You can think of reducing DNS lookup if that's a case according to your protocol. Generally, these things don't come up, okay, in API performance improvement, because everything is at the framework level, which are designed to be very good. But still, these points can be thought of. Security checks. On the network, we do a lot of security checks. It's important to do them, but are they taking a lot of time? So your response time is 10 milliseconds, your security check is taking like 3-4 milliseconds. Then definitely you have to improve the security checks logic. Okay. Anything else on the network part you can think of? The payload sizes I already mentioned. So yep, we even have CDNs specific for APIs. The normal CDMs are for static contents, but we have even for APIs. Okay, that can also be thought of. Fine. Now I would like to think on a broader picture apart from everything that we have just discovered. DB part, how we can improve, the coding part, how we can improve, UI parts and those things, but there can be something else which is really bugging your performance. Okay, so first thing, the design architecture you have done. Okay, from the start, have you followed the restful practices? So I'll put it like miscellaneous. They are just not for theory. Okay, put is different, post is different, and they have different optimizations. Have you followed that? Are you just using get and post? Okay, best restful practices, that is one thing. The other thing I would say is, have you secured your API for DDoS attack? And even if it is not DDoS attack, are people calling your API just for fun? Okay, only your business users, or from where you think your business would grow, should be calling. Is there a competitor which is calling your API? Not at a level where you would think, okay, okay, somebody is a good user, he's calling my API a lot of times. Do you have such checks based on domain level to understand whether whoever is calling is a bot or not, or somebody is maliciously trying to degrade your API responses? Okay, that is the concept you can think of. And then, okay, whatever you will do, software, it's not going to be perfect and run smoothly every time. Okay, so you have to think, when you are in a defensive situation, what you would do. Okay, you can think of like degraded API performances, not performance, degraded, I would say, functionality. So you are just giving the booking number and you can say to user, you understand, okay, your API endpoint for order details, it's under stress. You don't want to like bring it under more stress. Just say to the user, we are experiencing some issues fetching your orders, but it would be back in a moment. And you can give some timelines. Okay, don't, if you are already sick, you don't allow more thing to get into you, right? You will be more sick, you take precautions. It's the similar concept. If your API performance is already bad because of a lot of traffic, because something is not scaling fine, because your infrastructure is like saturated, CPU is not good, if you keep getting the requests, you would be down, totally down, you cannot do anything, you would be in ICU. And whoever is depending upon you, okay, friends, family, I don't want to mention this, but they would be also be under a risk, right? So if your booking API is not performing well, then your notification API, which is relying on you, would not perform well, and your whole infrastructure, your whole website built on API would go for a toss. So go for degraded performance. That's fine for user, and try to take pills, try to improve what is causing the issue. Something like a circuit breaker pattern can also be thought of in similar concept. Don't let degraded responses affect your business. There are ways to handle it, mitigate it, I would say. Okay, I think it's almost 35 minutes. I wanted to keep it under 30 minutes. I try to keep each of my videos under 30 minutes because I don't want to take a lot of time and people to take effort to like listen to my videos. Try to be crisp, but yeah, sometimes it goes over. Anyways, I would think of ways to like keep it under check, and there would be some short videos as well which are not so long, and it will have very crisp system design, software engineering, coding, best practices, real life experiences, which are very very like under 5 minutes or even 1 2 minutes, which can be like building blocks to your software journey. And whenever I post a video like that, I will try to gather all the concepts here and put it in a flow. Okay, that's fine for today, I would say now. But do stay in touch. I would try to bring up more videos and increase my performance to deliver the videos, both in terms of response time. I would try to bring quicker videos each time and also faster videos. Okay, and my idea here is to just break each and everything in simple flow and simple and easy way to understand things. Remove all the jargons. Okay, I don't use jargons. I could have gone into a lot of things like, okay, this is horizontal scaling. People would know who are in software engineering what's horizontal scaling, what's vertical scaling. That's very basic. I just want to get a step ahead and give a full picture. This whole thing can be designed and can be set just at the compute power level. Improve CPU. How would you improve? Spin a lot of nodes. Okay, have a lot of nodes on Kubernetes. Improve CPU, improve what you say memory. Similar concepts, have bigger machines, a lot of instances. This is common. Okay, okay, we even do mock interviews. So there the idea is like, whoever are requesting for mock interviews, we ask them real life questions. We give them tips how they have performed, what they should not say in interview. So if the candidates understand basic of a concept, he says, okay, this is X, this is Y. He doesn't know Z, but he just gives a hint of Z. Maybe I can do Z. The interviewer would ask about Z, and you would not be able to say it. So learning about interviews is one thing, preparing is one thing, but interview smartness is another thing. Even with 50% of learning and your communication skills, way of asking questions can really really impress the interview. And we give tips on resumes as well, real life questions for the interviews, how to answer your questions, answers, how to project yourself, what way you should get if you're not really comfortable with that question, or you are really looking at the back foot of a particular domain of questions you just really don't know, but there is a better way to respond for that, right? So that's the overall approach. Please stay tuned, do subscribe, and yep, as people say, hit the bell icon so that you would be notified. Cheers, guys. Happy learning. Bye.